Shalom from Jerusalem. This is TV7's Israel at War update. And as we're set to deliberate the latest developments here throughout the Middle East, particularly with focus on the heightened tensions between the Islamic Republic of Iran alongside its proxies versus Israel, the United States, and the West at large, it's always important to remember how this war began. 312 days ago, on October 7th of 2023, the Islamist Hamas terror organization and its affiliates in the Gaza Strip launched a surprise onslaught on southern Israel, declaring war by perpetrating a massacre, murdering some 1,200 mostly civilians, wounding over 4,800 others, and kidnapping 246 people, including elderly, men, women, children, and infants. 115 of them remain in Hamas captivity to date. The next day, on October 8th, the Iranians have practically joined this war by greenlighting their proxy in Lebanon to launch cross-border attacks against Israel. These attacks seemingly intensified over time, with thousands of rockets since October 8th to date being fired towards Israel, and not only from Lebanon, also from Syria, from Iraq, from Yemen, including from Iran proper on April 13th and 14th, a scenario which may yet again recur. Let's now turn to our TV7 editor-at-large, Mr. Emil Owen. It's good to see you again here in the studio this time. What can you update us on the latest?
Jonathan, I don't want to put you to sleep, but let me start with once upon a time. Some 55 years ago, the dominant word in political and strategic discourse was linkage. The linkage between talks between Israel and Egypt, Israel and Jordan, the four powers, the United States, the Soviet Union, Great Britain, and France, where their arms shipments to Israel, mostly the F-4 Phantom, would be linked to whatever Israel did in the peace talks. And here we are again with linkage between the two predominant issues of the day, or at least this week. One is the attack anticipated and threatened by Iran and Hezbollah. 2 weeks have elapsed. As we are speaking now, the threats are yet to be materialized, but it could happen any moment now. And the other issue linked with it is the framework for ceasefire and hostage release, which is supposed to be negotiated perhaps for the final time, but we had so many final times, at either Doha or Cairo day after tomorrow on Thursday. And one of the latest items in this signaling exercise comes from Tehran, where the Iranians are saying that the only way to stop or delay their retaliation for the Hania assassination under their auspices is for a deal to be struck. So we shouldn't take them, of course, at face value. Another signal whether they want to find an excuse not to retaliate, whether they want to have some credit for a deal should it be struck. This is where we are today.
You know, it amazes me every time again to hear the Iranians being so sinister about their supposed hopes for a ceasefire in Gaza. The one goal, if we're talking about their interests, their main interest is to maintain a low-intensity war on the northern front in order to pressure Israel to succumb on the southern front. And therefore, when we're talking about the Gaza ceasefire talks, the only scenario in which it would accept something is if the demands by Yahya Sinwar, the leader of Hamas in Gaza, who is subject to influence from Tehran, is for the IDF to disengage from the Philadelphia corridor, from other strategic spots, and to basically forfeit the war altogether, rendering reality back to the way it was on October 6th, something that obviously Israel cannot accept. Nevertheless, I'd like to turn to the former chief of intelligence at Mossad, namely Brigadier General in Reserve Amnon Sofrin. What can you enlighten us with in this context of the negotiations that we may be missing at this point in time?
I don't think that you are missing something, but let's see that it seems, first of all, that some of the delegations will be convening on this Thursday, trying to broker a deal that will, on one hand, bring on to the release of the people abducted to Gaza, and the second hand, to get to some agreement on ceasefire, because this is the ultimate demand of Hamas, and this is the ultimate provision for releasing the hostages. Now, I'm not sure that Hamas is going to attend this meeting, even though they begin to send hints that they're going to participate. On the other hand, the Iranians just released today a very interesting piece of item saying that they consider sending people of their own to the negotiation team, meaning to attend this meeting and to try to influence the whole issue and to broker some deal. And it goes together with what Amir just said, that they try to find some kind of an excuse, maybe, not to retaliate.
Specifically, they want to send observers to the meeting, which is odd for itself, since I'm not familiar with overt consultations in the same room between the Americans and the Iranians and potentially even the Israelis on any topic, let alone matters related to Tehran's strategic interests in the region.
You are right, but I'm not sure that I'm going to sit in the same room or in the same hotel even. But they will be around, maybe supervising and maybe assisting Hamas to get over all the obstacles if Hamas is going to participate, of course. And it's not decided yet. Yahya Sinwar didn't give yet the green light to get alone and to attend this meeting on Thursday. So if they will send somebody, it will be someone who is going to be kind of a supervisor that will assist Hamas, and will not sit in the same room, of course, with the Americans and the Israelis, because it doesn't go together.
Indeed. Well, let's now turn to the commander of the Israeli Air Force Task Force for Air and Missile Defense, namely Brigadier General in Reserve Doron Gavish. It's good to see you, General. I'd like to ask for your insight in this context. Of course, the IDF is preparing itself both on offense as well as on defense. Now it's also highlighting to the Israeli public that while there are no new defensive measures to be applied on the home front, nonetheless, they will try to also provide early alert to the public in order to prepare for potentially a massive attack from Iran, Hezbollah, and other proxies, something that may not necessarily be helpful in context of intelligence. How can you explain that scenario for us, and what should the public know who are watching right now and keen to understand what to expect?
Well, Jonathan, this is a very good question because when it comes to the civilians of Israel, it is a quite complicated situation. And if on one hand, the military authorities wants to convey to the public where exactly we are, what is the expected behavior, and the instinct of military personnel is to be ready all the time, super alerted and so on. But when it comes to the Israeli civilians, you want them to be alert, but you also want them to be able to continue with their life, and you cannot push it like you are doing it with the soldiers. And it is an interest of Israel that life would continue. This is, by the way, if our lives won't continue, this is exactly what our enemies would like to gain. So we are in a point that is very sensitive one. From one hand, we want to say to the Israeli people, and this is what I think the IDF spokesman is trying to do. He's coming out to the public, although there is nothing to say, but he's saying that there is nothing to say yet. And this is very important because it is important for their confidence that if there is someone over there, that if something would start it, he would be telling us. And I think this is very important for the confidence of the people of Israel, as I mentioned. From the military side, of course, that the military is in a super high alert. You never know what are the exact intentions of the one who is in the other side. You know what he can do, but you don't have his all the time control over his intentions. And as a military, mainly on the defense, you are all the time preparing yourself to be surprised, because this is the nature of the defender, and this is what the defending side in Israel is doing. And the last thing that I would add, and I think it was very important because you mentioned it, that the rhetorics in Israel is a bit different from what we've seen on the 13th and 14th of April. Today, Israel is declaring that we are not going to stay only on the defense, and if there would be a significant attack toward Israel, Israel is going to be also in the offensive, both in the Hezbollah and toward Iran. And I think this is super important. The last really thing that I would say with regard to it is that I think it is interesting to say that we talked so much about the CENTCOM presence in this area, but the United States yesterday or day before yesterday highlighted the fact that there is also a submarine which is coming toward this area. And what we have to remember, that different from the other means that we are talking about in this area, submarine is an attack machine. It is not a defender. And this is also something which is, I think, very important to highlight in this context.
Very important indeed, Mr. Oren. F-22 Raptors, two entire wings of 18 squadrons, indeed, of the most sophisticated 6th-gen fighter aircraft. We see the Lincoln joining the Theodore Roosevelt, and we're seeing many assets in this region, Bathan, and really a significant contingent here in the Middle East. This is not only defensive.
No, of course it is not. And, the attack submarines armed with Tomahawk missiles, they are nuclear powered. They are not nuclear tipped. These missiles are conventionally armed, but nevertheless, after the submarine named Florida, they are all named for states, after it had gone back to the United States, it was revealed that a few months ago it took part in action against the Houthis. At the time, it was not revealed, but it turns out that some of the missiles fired into Yemen were by the Florida, and again, the revelation was a signal. We have other assets, not only destroyers, with defensive means, with anti-missile missiles and the like. Let me challenge some of the assumptions in your remarks where you said...
Before you do, if I may, there was a small report about this, but it was not caught on to by global media or the mainstream media, and therefore they had to come out and highlight it, hoping initially for that to happen.
Now, you said earlier that what Iran strategically wants to achieve is for Israel to concede defeat by a ceasefire in Gaza, which will solidify Hamas rule over Gaza. And let me offer an alternative approach. What Iran wants to do is to save Hezbollah for the day when it goes nuclear. It doesn't want to waste Hezbollah now. It is not in the cards for it. It really wants a ceasefire in Gaza, because a ceasefire in the north between Israel and Hezbollah will follow, and Israel will not be able to step up what Iran considers its plans from an attack on Lebanon and the retaliation to an attack on the Iranian nuclear infrastructure. So it is in Iran's interests, at least according to this alternative vision, to have a ceasefire now in Gaza.
I don't disagree with you. I think it's part of the entire strategy. But nonetheless, since 2014, when Ayatollah Ali Khamenei at the time came out and published the 9 reasons and how to destroy the state of Israel, he highlighted, of course, the West Bank. Israel reacted to it relatively late by conducting Operation Wavebreaker at the time in order to frustrate Iranian efforts to flood the Judea, Samaria, the Jordan Valley with weaponry, with chief focus on the northern Samaria districts. And this, of course, also led one of the key reasons to the 7th of October in order to try and frustrate the pressure that was put on Hamas, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, and other terror affiliates in these territories in order to alleviate pressure there. Hezbollah came into the picture in order to alleviate pressure from Hamas in Gaza. So everything is interconnected, and of course we need to think, when coming to a point of reaching hopefully a good deal for Israel's perspective, strategic aspects of Iran's ploy need to be kept into context.
They want attrition, they want a limited conflict,
Absolutely.
They fear a full-scale war.
Indeed. General Sofrin, your take on this?
I think that I more agree with what Amir said. I think that the interest of Iran is to keep Hezbollah as safe as it can be, because they don't want, not nicely said, but to waste the capabilities of Hezbollah on the Palestinians of Gaza. It's not their own, it's not what we call the main effort. The main effort is to be able to hit Israel in case Iran goes to a nuclear path or exceeding to a nuclear path, and Israel is going to try to hit Iran. Then the first response will come from Hezbollah, and Hezbollah, of course, preserves its own capabilities. Even if it's going to retaliate and attack Israel right now in response to what happened in Beirut with the elimination of Fuad Shukr, the fact is that it will be a limited attack that will not drag Israel into a big war or a larger war into Lebanon. Even though you can't control the Israeli, of course, the Israeli respond, but nevertheless, that's what they will try to do. And the Iranians will assist them in that way, because they want to preserve these capabilities. And I fully agree with what Amir said, for the day to come when Iran is going to be nuclear and is going to try to face a threat coming out from Israel, and then the first response will come from Hezbollah.
Therefore, General Sofrin, if I may follow up on this, the Iranians are expediting their efforts in order to enrich more uranium, to test various capabilities in order to ultimately also test a device and then break out to the point of being a nuclear power, potentially even fielding such weaponry. Do you see the United States in this context taking this into account, considering the latest intelligence coming out of the United States with regard to Tehran's race towards a nuclear weapon at this point in time?
We should take into consideration that this process of producing what we call in the end a nuclear device that is ready to be activated is a long way. That means the fact that you have enough enriched material is not enough. It's only part of the way, because now you have to begin the weaponization effort, which is complicated and will take a long time. Let's say that the minimum is a year or a year and a half. And then you have to deliver it on some platform, probably on missiles, on ballistic missiles. And then you have, in the end, to engage it into the ballistic missile warhead, and only then it will be ready for launch. It is a long process. It's not something that will happen within 2 days or 3 days. The fact they will have enriched material or enriched uranium up to the level of 90% doesn't give them any advantage for the long run. It is very, very important cornerstone. They're already there because they succeeded in doing it for 60%. And to get to 90%, it's very easy to go through. But nevertheless, it's a long way, and it won't happen within the coming months.
Indeed. Of course, there were also reports at some point which the IAEA has addressed with regard to even 81% enrichment levels. Of course, the Iranians contest anything alleged against them unless they are caught red-handed, and then they still detest it, but of course, with facts on the ground. General Gavish, I'd like to ask you, in context of the current state of play, how damaged is Hezbollah at this point, and to what degree is the IDF happy with the starting point, potentially, in case of a conflagration against Tehran's most potent force in Lebanon?
Well, I'm not sure that happy is the word that I would use, Jonathan, but for sure, if we're looking at it from a military point of view, from one side, we could say that we are in a point that we are unfortunately quite experienced with both the Iranians and also the Hezbollah, and now talking about the north. So we are coming from a point that we basically know our enemy. We fought against him from the last few months. And we're also, being humble, looking at surprises that he would try to surprise us, and then so. From the other side, I think that, this could bring an opportunity. If the Iranians and also the Hezbollah will attack Israel, unfortunately, it would bring us to a point that we can't, stay back anymore, and we would have to do something. And there is also military opportunities there because Israel could hit the Hamas, the Hezbollah, and also Iran directly without needing to, keep it in a way that we didn't say or we didn't do nothing, and that it also could be an option to show them that they could be hit and they could be hit strong. So this is kind of an opportunities that are there, although you have to remember that when you start something like this, you know how you start, you don't know how you end it. But from a pure military point, the strikes and the hit that Israel could be doing in the offensive part could be very significant ones.
Indeed. Mr. Owen, we don't have very much time left. Nonetheless, I think it's important to continue to consider what may such a scenario of an all-out conflagration also include. Do you see Hashd Shabi join the fight, the Zainibiyun, the Fatimiyun brigades in Syria, the other Shiite proxies there, but also particularly we saw today in Iraq, Muqtada al-Sadr, the leader of one of the Shiite groups that is not swayed entirely by the Islamic Republic of Iran, meet with Hashd Shabi, with other Iranian proxies in order to coordinate, according to their statement, a potential defense and offense against the state of Israel. What are we to take out of that?
Well, the government and military of Iraq have been hostile towards Israel historically. There was an Iraqi contingent here in 1948. It was very dangerous in a very vulnerable point in Israel, and it was blocked and deflected with great effort. And then in 1967, the Israeli Air Force bombed H3, the airfield, and of course we remember what happened with Saddam Hussein. Israel does not want to hit Iraq, the Iraqi territory, because of the American influence and for the time being presence there. But if attacked by anyone from Iraq during war, Israel would definitely counterattack whoever does it.
Which is important to re-emphasize. Israel has informed its allies, both in the United States as well as in Europe, that it will respond to any attack emanating from any territory against it, and will do so disproportionately, as it put it. We have roughly 2 minutes. Nonetheless, I'd like to ask you, General Sofrin, very briefly, if I may, The goal, the main vocal objective of Israel with regard to Lebanon is the implementation of UN Security Council 1701. This resolution, of course, aims to dictate that Hezbollah move north of the Litani River and does not engage in belligerent activities south of that river. What can you tell us about that? Is that a viable reality to be implemented in any scenario?
It can be implemented only in one scenario: if the war in Gaza is going to stop, and there are going to be negotiations, and Israel should have to bring onto the table some concessions regarding some amendments along the border between Israel and Lebanon. There are 13 points that Hezbollah claims that are Lebanese territory and should be brought back to the control of the Lebanese government. And if all this will happen, if of course, then only then we can speak about implementing 1701 and bringing back or pushing back the Hezbollah north of the Litani River to stay there and hope for good.
General Gavish, last sentence from you.
Well, Jonathan, those are for sure not a regular time. We are in very high alert here in Israel towards what could happen with Iran and with the Hezbollah, but we still have to remember that we had the goals from this war. One of them was to bring back the hostages in Gaza, and the other one was, of course, dismantling completely the Hamas. We are not fully there in one of them. We are very close to it. In the other one, we still have way to go.
Indeed. Well, this is all the time we have for today. I'd like to thank General Kavish, General Sofrin, and Mr. Oren for your insights. And I'd like to thank all of you at home as well and seize this opportunity also to highlight that TV7 Israel is a 100% donation-based nonprofit ministry with all of our productions available free of charge. Your donations practically support programs just like this one, and therefore I'd like to encourage you to support with a donation. You can do so via our website at www.tv7israelnews.com. From here in Jerusalem, until our next update. Shalom. For more of TV7's productions and editorials, we invite you to visit our website at www.tv7israelnews.com.
Jerusalem Studio, now available on Spotify.